Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, August 5th, 2019.
Commissioner Cabello, James, Davis, and Caloza are present. President James, you do have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Street Services.
Street Services, Art Martinez.
Bureau of Sanitation, Daniel McKay.
Good morning, Mike Cirillo, Bureau of Engineering. Good morning, Asad Al-Najjar, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Brett McReynolds, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we did receive one speaker card under general public comment. We have no commentary under the Neighborhood Council comments section. We also received speaker cards on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In addition to that, we did receive 3 emails that came in separate, and those documents have been distributed to all commissioners as well. And the emails are on item number 5.
Right, okay. Real quick, just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin with our presentation. Mr. Hall, are you here? Can you come forward for a second? On agenda item number 5, I'm not going to call the item yet, but just for kind of scheduling purposes for today, have you had any additional or any communications with the council office regarding whether or not the council office wants this heard specifically today, or wants any kind of a continuance?
I have not. I've been out of the country. I just arrived back on Sunday. My client may have had some communication with the council office, but I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay, is your client here?
Diana, do you know the answer to that?
Okay, well, you can check with them, and then when we call
Okay.
the item, maybe that'll be the first question I ask. We have a number of speaker cards on number 5 today, so we're going to have a hearing today. The results of that hearing, obviously, we don't know yet, but
Okay, great.
But we are gonna have the hearing today since so many folks have attended today.
Great. I will
All right.
figure that out. Thank you.
I know that the item has been continued a couple of times before to get to today, so we'll discuss that as well.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead with with Commissioner Caloza. Why don't we start with, you know what, before we do that, Mr. Sachs, did you put in a card? Let's go ahead on number 6. We've got a housekeeping item, administrative item. The mayor has approved and authorized the Board of Public Works on behalf of OCB to execute the proposed MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with Department of Water and Power, for the continued operation of the tree planting program for energy efficiency. This is from July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2021, the current fiscal year. I don't have a card on number 6, so is there a second to my motion that we approve agenda item number 6 forthwith by Commissioner Cabello? Any objection? Without objection, we will do so. We have meeting minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, June 19th, 2019. Commissioner Cabello has approved my motion that we approve those meeting minutes. Any objection? Without objection, we will do so. And I see that we have Mr. Kareemzadeh as well from the Bureau of Engineering. Thank you. Mahmoud, you want to come forward on, let's go ahead and have that for our summer internship program. Commissioner Caloza, are you joining him today? Great. All right, let's go ahead and take care of that. And welcome to our college students. I can tell who you are. That's right. Prospective employees for the Department of Public Works.
Good morning. Good morning, President James. Good morning, Bureau representatives, commissioners, city attorney, and Dr. Campos. My name is Jessica Caloza. I'm here on behalf of, or with my colleagues in the Bureau of Engineering. We really want to take time to recognize the hard work and value that our college interns provide to the city every year. They provide a tremendous amount of work to each of your divisions. A lot of them are aspiring engineers, architects, landscape artists, and as you can see, a lot of them are overwhelmingly women. So that is incredibly exciting to see, especially representing the board where we have now a majority women. So it's really exciting to see that representation in our internship program. And so I just really want to thank our city engineer, Gary Lee Moore, Mahmoud the Deputy City Engineer for all his hard work, and then our two colleagues as well from the Bureau of Engineering. Anna Lynn Rocio, who's the Assistant Division Manager, and Amanda Rogers, who's the Training Section Supervisor. These three individuals, in addition to a lot of other mentors at the Bureau of Engineering, have dedicated a lot of time and effort to make sure that our interns have an incredibly valuable experience every year. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Mahmoud to give a little bit more information about this summer internship program and to kind of kick off what will be a recognition of all your amazing work this summer. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cloza. Mr.
Good
Crane
morning.
today, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. Thank you so much. Appreciate. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
I'm very excited today to be here and help with the presentation of certifications to our summer interns and summer intern program that we launched last year, and we received about 300 applications last year. This year, we received 500 applications from 50 campuses. So it's amazing that
500 applications from how many campuses?
50.
50 campuses.
50.
Wow.
Exactly.
How many
And
slots?
we had about 26, am I correct? 26. And we all been excited in the Bureau of Engineering in order to welcome our summer internship program, and then seeing very enthusiastic individuals, civil engineers, architects, landscape architects who want to come in and see how the government works, how the Bureau of Engineering help with design and construction of our projects. And I had a little chance this morning to talk to each one of them and ask them for a little experience, a little talk about their experience they had with us in the last about 10 weeks of this program. And I'm glad to report back that they all had a very meaningful time in terms of getting real experience with the background in college. And as a matter of fact, when I asked them if they come back to us, most of them said yes, they will. They will come back when we go back to their campuses for recruitment. They will consider working full-time for the city of Los Angeles. This is amazing. The Bureau will bring this individual in order to get them involved with the projects and teach them how the real engineering and architectural work is. But amazingly, this is two-way street. We also learn from them. We learn from them about the new technologies, with the new way of thinking, with what the creative ideas of today's are. So I'm very excited, and thank you, Commissioner Caloza, with helping us to get these intern recognitions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud.
So we're going to go ahead and just start calling up each intern. So if we call your name, please don't be shy. Come on up. And we'll kind of call every name and then give you guys one big round of applause at the end. Sound good? And then I also, before I begin, just want to give a quick shout out to Jason Bautista, who's going to be an intern in the Board of Public Works. Raise your hand. And today is his first hour here at City Hall. So welcome to the city family, Jason. Okay. And I'll just read what the certificate says. So it's a certificate of appreciation. The Board of Public Works honors Alyssa Jones from UC Davis. On behalf of the board, we appreciate your dedication and commitment to the Bureau of Engineering Summer Internship Program. Your participation in this program has played a vital role in its great success. So thank you for your time. Alyssa Jones.
And Commissioner Cloza, could we have, with each person you call up with you, would you also mention what school they're from?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Alyssa Jones, UC Davis. You may stand over there. Angel Borjas, Cal Poly Pomona. Angelica Anders from UC San Diego. Go Tritons. Annika Tan from also UC San Diego. Did you make them sit in order?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Kara Campbell from USC. Dakota Tilton from Humboldt. Eduardo Gomez from CSU Long Beach. Oh, Gomez, right? Gomez. Eduardo Gomez, my apologies. Gabriela Torres from LMU. Imani Elston from UCLA. This is Hilver. How do you pronounce his last name? Mazariegos. Gilver Mazariegos? Yeah, okay. Thank you for bearing with me.
What school?
Congratulations. From UCI. Thank you, President James.
Okay. We're keeping track of the schools. We have not yet
you
had one
are?
out. We have not yet had one outside the state of California. Go ahead.
Jocelyn Valencia from UC San Diego. Did you know I went there? Is that where you- Congratulations. Okay. Lihu
Got your
Proc
you got your
from
picture
CSU Los Angeles. Congratulations. And you guys can line up on this side too. Manleen Ubhi from CSU Northridge. Congratulations. Megan Bell from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
We do have a lot of amazing schools in California, though. As I listen to these, go ahead. Go ahead.
Noah Kang from UC San Diego.
UCSD is winning so far. The number of students.
Ryan Wong from UC Irvine.
Oh, UCI making a comeback here.
Sergio Chavez from CSU LA. Shania Turner from USC.
Davis, you have two. For Davis and Garcia.
Teresa Rebolito from CSU Long Beach.
Oh, there's two or three. There we go. Three.
Congratulations. And last but not least, Wendy Navarrete from CSU Los Angeles.
And they have three as well.
So if we can give a big... So thank you all for all your hard work this summer, and thank you again to Bureau of Engineering. These two ladies are too shy right now to make any remarks, but they did all the hard work in getting this program up and running and
That
making
would be
sure...
Ms. Rocio and Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
It's actually Lauren Perry's actually sitting in for Amanda.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
I just want to add, Annalyn, and she told me don't say anything. But Annalyn did a great job. This is not easy, sorting through 500 applications.
So tell me about it.
And a lot of phone calls been made, a lot of them been talked to before they get invited to come in. And Annalyn and her team did a great job of organizing this, make it easier for the bureau's managers in order to pick their interns and make it easier and comfortable for the interns to come into the organization and get their experience. So thank you so much, Annalyn, and your team. Thank you, thank you.
So give them one big round of applause.
And do you have a couple that are going to speak?
Sure.
Do you have a couple of them that will speak to us?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And real quick, in between years, so I guess going into, those of you that are entering your senior year, okay, entering your junior year, entering your sophomore year. I'm assuming we don't have any entering their freshman year, or do we? Okay. Great, thank you.
So I would like to we have two volunteers to talk to you about their experiences. Anika, where are you? Anika, come on in. Come on in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Annika. I'm from the UC San Diego, and I am currently a student engineer for the Construction Management Division. So at the start of the summer internship program, I was not sure what would be my takeaway at the end of the 10 weeks. The only thing in sight was that I would be able to facilitate a real-world connection with my coursework. However, over the past 6 weeks, I've done not only that, but I've exceeded that. My experience with the Construction Management Division has been incredibly diverse. I have worked on pre-construction projects such as the Venice Rose Beach restroom replacement, and I have worked on a demolition, the Parker Center demolition, and 2 recreational centers, Robertson Recreation Center and the Algin Sutton Recreation Center. In addition to that, I'm currently working on a streets and sidewalks project called the Prop 1C Crenshaw Boulevard Improvement Project. That's a work in progress in itself, considering the fact that a lot of it still needs to be designed, and there are about, I think, 5-6 zones in that project that needs to be done, and hopefully we'll get an extension on the project.
Would you like to present on that this morning?
No. All in all, the experience has been really rewarding, and I've learned a lot from it, from the administrative side to meetings, to change orders, allowance orders, how important written word is in facilitating communications between the city and the contractors. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hilver?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
UCI. Yes, from UCI, yes. I'm a little bit tired. I just came back from a trip a few hours ago, so I'm running on fumes right now, but it's not every day I get to speak to the Board of Public Works, so there's no way I could have missed it. To begin with, I am honored to be able to share my experience with the Board of Public Works, as well as say how thankful I am that I have this opportunity to be part of the city. It was a dream of mine to be involved in some sort of city project and to give back to the community in that way. I am also thankful for my supervisor, Alvaro, and my work buddy, Andrew, as well as everyone else at CMD. I felt very welcomed, and I am really grateful for that. Since I am in construction management, one of the best things I had the opportunity to do in my division was go to multiple job sites. I learned just how many different projects the city of Los Angeles works on, from pools, shell centers, to gyms and asphalt plants. I also had the privilege to see the grand opening of the Lincoln Park pool. I got to see the community get together and celebrate the reopening of the pool, as it's been out of service for almost 10 years. So it was a big deal for the community to have another pool. And as well as it was awesome seeing the city engineer present the pool to the community and, you know, cut the ribbon and all that stuff. That was probably like my first time seeing something like that. So that was something great. And I kind of learned just how amazing it is to see the community be so happy with the work that we do, and to see them be so motivated and be so impacted by such a project really fills us with determination to keep making projects.
Sometimes amazing to see them when they're not happy as well.
oh yes.
Better when they're happy, though.
Yeah, when they're happy, yes. It's determination. Yeah, a lot. I also got to see a finished project of an asphalt plant located near Olympic, passing the LA River. It's a very small asphalt plant. It's only like less than 1 acre. But in contrast to this, I also saw another asphalt plant, which is called the Blue Diamond, which is in Irwindale, California. And I got to see these massive pits, these like ginormous pits. And what was funny was that there's neighborhoods around it. Normally, these pits are normally found outside of the city. So it's funny how the neighbors, the residents, were okay with having this large pit right across their backyard. So that was great. And another project I've been involved in is the Rancho Cienega Sports Complex, and that's the one I was assigned to, which is in MLK in Obama, which is very poetic. And the scope of work for the new gym the scope of work is for a new gym and pole building. And right now the project is still in phase one, so it's still like under, they're currently doing foundation right now. So I didn't really, by the time I entered, I didn't really get to see the cool stuff. They've installed some HP paddles into the ground, so they had to like vibrate it and hammer it. But I came in there too late, so I just got to see them just do welding for the most part. Um, but I really did enjoy my time here at CMD. I felt like I had constant work to do, and honestly, I feel like the work I did really did mean something. And I know there's other internships that you don't get that same feeling. And I hope everyone else here in the internship got to enjoy theirs as much as I did, and I hope that the internship continues for many more years so others can experience this for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll start this morning with Commissioner Davis.
Great. Thank you so very much, Abood, and all of our engineering staff. I was going to say faculty, but our staff and
Professor Davis, go ahead, sir.
The outstanding job that we have done. I always like to start with the fact that when Mayor Eric Garcetti came here in 2013, I think we had about 5,000 students that we used to have in internship programs, and we have expanded. Now I think it's to around 15,000 students, and so, 17,000, and I look forward to next year. But this is a wonderful program because it allows all of the things that you have learned in school for you to have an opportunity to see how it works in the real world. And I often think about engineering. Well, what do engineers do? Without the details, you help to improve the quality of life for those that you work for, and by the things that you do, whether it is implementing the details of constructing a bridge, or whether it is putting together the plans to construct a building where we can conduct business, and all of the tasks that you do as an engineer in the various aspects of engineering, from structural engineering to civil engineer, etc. All of those phases of engineering help to improve our quality of life in this city. I am really proud of what we have done this year. We've really highlighted the California universities, and of course we have universities all over this country, from Harvard and Yale to Columbia, where CC went, and all of these other universities. But to reflect on the diverse universities in California this year, we've done a great job at that, and I look forward to our future classes and hope that they have the same great experiences next year that you have had this year. And I definitely have to give a shout out to the oldest private university in California, not Stanford, as some people think, but University of Southern California, where I've had the privilege of going. And so you have cleverly integrated USC in this dynamic display of one of the finest university systems in the country, and that's the California university systems, from California State University to our UC systems. And we know that diversity is something that they have been working on, and they have been proud of what they have accomplished in increasing that. And I will just conclude by saying that one of the strengths of this particular class for the Bureau of Engineering is the gender equity that we have, in making sure that women have been a dominant part of this engineering program. And we hope, you need to know, that we will be able to match that kind of inclusion in the jobs of engineers as well. So thank you so very much. Congratulations. And we look forward to you hopefully coming here to be engineers in the Bureau of Engineering when you graduate. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Cabello.
Thank you, President James. First, thank you to BOE for such a wonderful program and for the opportunities you're giving these young folks who hopefully one day will be our folks. So we'll see about that. And I want to thank all of the students for your service to the city. I think that we definitely got a lot out of you this summer, and I hope that you got just as much from the program as well. I think that, as Commissioner Davis talked about gender equity and the diversity in schools, you all represent the diversity of Los Angeles, which I'm really happy to see. I think that's really important to have representation in all walks of life, but especially in our STEM fields. So I'm really happy, and especially in light of the tragedy in El Paso, I'm especially heartened to see so many Latinos and especially Latinas represented in this program. It means a lot to me personally. So thank you all, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. Let me just say that first, a big thank you to the Bureau of Engineering. It is a lot of work to put on a program of this size. I think the most interns I've had one summer was last summer. I had 3, and that was significant. So significant that we had to disperse them around various parts of the building. But that said, it is just a terrific program, so thank you all for the work that you've done. To all the students, I can say I can remember every single internship that I ever had. I was lucky to have more than one in the 80s, early 80s when I was in college, if I dare admit that. It's been a while. And I can remember every single one of them, and every one of them in one way or another played a significant role in the development of a very diverse and rewarding career that I have been fortunate to have. So thank you all for the time that you put in. Every day that you came in, maybe got up a little earlier than you wanted to, maybe earlier than some of your friends did that were also doing other things this summer. It is well worth it, and you will experience its worth for the rest of your lives. So thank you for the time that you put into it, and for your contribution to our amazing city, as has been referenced by my colleagues. And regarding the field of engineering, I stumbled my way into the field of law, but I came from great engineering roots, as I've said before. Both of my grandfathers were civil engineers of one sort or another for the federal government in different aspects of the federal government during parts of their career, and it is you get to do amazing work in this career, and hopefully you got a nice taste of it this summer in working with the best engineering bureau in the country. And we do hope that you will consider, as you begin your employment options, of which you all have, that you will consider a career in public service, specifically with us here in the city of Los Angeles, as you move forward. And finally, Commissioner Caloza, thank you for your work as a liaison on this as well. It's very important for our board. So with that, we will choreograph a brief recess for a photograph, probably because of the number of folks we have in the back of the room, Paul, in the back of the room, and then we will return to our agenda. Thank you. Okay, returning to our agenda, let's go ahead and take general public comment. Mr. Sachs, you have a card in on general public comment?
I do. Thank you. For the record, Arnold Sachs. Congratulations to the new students. Just something they should keep in mind also, that when they started living, the Earth is a lot smaller planet now than it was 20 years ago. And so when you do engineering projects, you should keep that in mind because it affects the whole planet. That being said, there's a couple of things that really, it's like walking through a landmine field. The LA Weekly, the LA Downtown News had a couple of good stories. The people who run the Skid Row hotels, somebody wrote a letter in mentioning that the supportive services part of the administration programs that people want to get involved in for housing isn't as important as the actual housing. You should look into that. You should really read that letter. Exactly, they're on the right track because it's not about supportive services. It's actually more about getting people into shelters, into a bed. And we could talk about that. I'll talk about that tomorrow, though, at Board of Supervisors. That seems to be one of their pet peeves. They provide the supportive services. There was another, wasn't here on Friday because I went to Van Nuys. It's very interesting. It seems that the city council has items that reference downtown. They have hearings in Van Nuys, and items for Van Nuys, they have hearings downtown. So people can't travel to one or the other. But it was regarding some CRA covenants for low-income housing, and they extended them for 10 years, but they really didn't extend it for 10 years. They're cheating the people. But it's interesting that they have these covenants for low-income housing, but not covenants for projects like Bunker Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. So that will close general public comment. Agenda item number 1, Council District 6, budget increase and change order numbers 6, 13, 14, 17, and a supplemental change order number 18 from Metro Builders and Engineers Group Limited for the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant primary tanks, high pressure effluent piping replacement capital improvement project and chlorine contact tanks. HPE System Improvements Project, recommending that the board authorize $451,639 in additional contingency and approve a revised construction budget of $2,307,792 for the project. Secondly, authorize the city engineer to issue additive change order numbers 6, 13, 14, and deductive change order number 17 for a net credit amount of $130,906 for the project to account for deleted scope. And third, authorize the city engineer to issue supplemental agreement change order number 18 to Metro for a not to exceed amount of $562,281 for capital improvement project 8649 to install a new above ground 6-inch diameter ductile iron pipe near the effluent channel at phase 1 and phase 2 chlorine contact tanks. Mr. Sachs on number 1 before we go to Mr. Cirillo.
Yes, thank you again. For the record, Arnold Sachs. Actually, the item that caught my attention here, the wording that caught my attention here is about the piping replacement and the city engineer getting involved in piping replacement. There's a lot of pipes under the city. I don't know if people actually realize just how many miles and miles and miles of pipes there are under the city. Who's actually responsible for all that piping, making sure that it's up to date? I know the DWP has a lot of problems with leaks, and so I just know that, like, the county board of supervisors there was a water bond that passed that they're going to give money to the communities, but it's not the communities that actually deliver water. It's the water agencies. It's like the Metropolitan Water District and these other water agencies that actually deliver the water, but they don't repair the infrastructure. And that's a real big part of living in the city and making life livable, and doable. And so who actually is in charge of like the petroleum pipelines that run under the city and the gas pipelines that run under the city and the water pipelines that run under the city? I know the city council offices make a lot of money from brain cramp. They have a contract with the companies, franchise fees, that's the word I was thinking about. So they make a lot of money getting franchise fees paid to them, but nobody really checks into the infrastructure. And some of these pipes are older than I am, and I'm a senior citizen. And so some of these things need to be checked more regularly. You need to check with your city council representatives or your city council person and find out exactly what's going on in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Cirillo on number 1.
Good morning, Mike Cirillo with the Bureau of Engineering. Let me start out with a little background about this project before I get into the details of the report. High-pressure effluent is a byproduct of the wastewater process. So basically, we treat the water to tertiary standards, and then this water is used throughout the treatment plants for chemical processes, cooling water, and wash down and cleaning. 2 areas in the plant rely very heavily on this water. One of it is the primary tanks, and the other area is the chlorine contact tanks. The piping systems in those areas contain several main lines and branches and over 100 hose bibs. A hose bib is basically a branch off of the main line with a valve, which allows the plant to conduct washdown activities in the area for proper operations and maintenance at each tank. The existing piping system is about 35 years old and is excessively corroded and deteriorated. There's been numerous leaks in the system, so that's resulted in extensive repairs to the system over the past few years. Thus, we designed this project and entered into construction to replace the entire HPE system at the primary tanks and chlorine contact tanks, as well as installing surge tanks on the HPE system. After we entered into construction, while installing the surge tanks, we encountered several undocumented utilities that could not be identified during design. They were underground and constituted unforeseen conditions, which required the contractor to reroute several of the piping and surge tank locations. The existing piping is located under the concrete decks, and we could not do a safe inspection during the design process. We assumed that we would be able to use some of the existing supports when we installed the new piping. However, after construction began, we found out that the pipe supports were severely deteriorated as well, and they were not at the proper spacing for the new piping. Therefore, we were required to install new supports instead of reusing the existing supports. Finally, there were some enhancements made to the design. The existing piping runs underneath the concrete deck, and sanitation requested that we reroute this piping above the deck so they could have accessibility to this new piping system for better ease and maintenance. Lastly, to issue these change orders, we will exceed the 25% limit, so we need to execute a supplemental agreement, which will render that no other terms of the contract be changed. The project's about 65% completed, and this, again, is a not-to-exceed amount being requested by the Bureau of Engineering. We will perform independent estimates and enter into negotiations with the contractor to try to minimize costs and impacts on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Cirillo. So you're about 65% complete, but we're high on change orders on this one.
We are.
Given that we have 35% left to go, roughly, what do you expect the change order world to look like going forward?
We've looked through the design, and because we're mostly out of the tanks at this point and just installing the tanks or the piping above grade, we don't think that we'll encounter any more change orders, so we feel comfortable with this budget to close out the contract.
Okay. That's what I was looking for. So this budget will close out the contract. Great, thank you. Any further questions? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 1, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We'll send number 1 forthwith. Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 2, Council Districts 8, 9, and 15, Construction Order Sidewalk Repair Program, Package number 44, Emergency Pre-Qualified On-Call Geotechnical Structural Construction Services List, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue a construction order and a notice to proceed for the project to Mike Perlich and Sons in the amount of $1,440,690.25 and a not to exceed amount of $1,728,829, which includes contingency. Mr. Sachs on number 2.
Yes, thank you again. For the record, Arnold Sachs. A couple of things about this item. Actually, it's 3 council districts. I know that years ago, a couple of the councilmen presented in front of the city council a plan to raise the sales tax to do street repairs. They had a program that had been done by the city that went around and graded all the city streets, and they had an idea of what they were good or bad. So I'm wondering, this emergency, what qualifies sidewalk repair as an emergency? A lot of people in a lot of districts would tell you their sidewalks are terrible. What exactly qualifies an emergency sidewalk repair notice to come before the Department of Public Works? Would you get that information from maybe a neighborhood council? Is there a list of sidewalks to be repaired in the other, 12 districts that are in the city? It seems to me that there's a lot of work talked about on sidewalk repair. I know there's a lot of work done as far as making sidewalks ADA compliant. Does that qualify them as being emergency repair worthy? And again, it also comes back to the amount of money that's available in each council district and each council district office from all the, and I had the word, another brain cramp, from all the contracts that they have through bus bench revenue, AB 1290 revenue, the, darn, I can't remember the word, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Vega on number 3 for the sidewalk repair program. A number of different locations that are provided in the transmittals. Go ahead.
Good morning. Robert Vega, Program Manager for the Bureau of Engineering Sidewalk Repair Program. I'm here today to request authority to award sidewalk repair package number 4 to Mike Perlich and Sons, the lowest responsible bidder. In the way background, this is part of the engineering sidewalk repair access request acceleration efforts, where the sidewalk repair program was appropriated $10 million in SB1 funding in fiscal year 2018-19 to implement additional access requests.
That's in addition to the $31 million that's part of the settlement, correct?
That is correct.
Go ahead.
The scope of work includes repairing sidewalks and constructing access ramps and auxiliary work at 15 access request site locations in residential neighborhoods in CDs 8, 9, and 15. That constitutes 50,000 square feet of sidewalk repair, or approximately 2 miles. On June 3rd, 2019, the sidewalk repair program solicited bids from all 9 contractors on the emergency pre-qualified on-call geotechnical structural list. And on June 18th, bids were received from 2 contractors. Mike Perlich and Sons was deemed the lowest responsible bidder, and the duration for the contract is for 90 days. Also on a related note, I want to inform you that the board that we have solicited contractors from our community level contracting sidewalk repair program pre-qualified on-call list and issued 3 small contracts as part of the access request acceleration efforts. Each contractor will be given 2 repair sites with an average contract cost of $85,000. And that concludes.
Thank you, Mr. Vega. You anticipated our questions on that. So with that, I'll make any questions?
No,
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank him for thinking ahead, because when you look at where we are doing this work and the opportunity that we have, and it hadn't been done all this time, certainly if we could mix the 2 in, which you cleverly did, and I just wanted to verbally thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That sounded like a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Caloza. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? We'll send number 2 forthwith. Agenda item number 3, Council District 14, Amendment number 2, a property lease at 6th Street Viaduct Replacement Project. Mark Spilo, trustee of the Mark Spilo or Spilo, you'll tell us, Udi, in a moment, Living Trust, recommending that the board first authorize the city engineer to approve the second amendment to the lease for the property located at 585 South Santa Fe Avenue in Los Angeles, also known as assessor parcel number APN 5164-007-022. That's the property. The amendment is for a 2-year extension to the existing lease with a 1-year option to renew. It's transmittal number 1. The property is required for completion of the project. And secondly, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting, upon request of the city engineer, to draw the following 4 necessary demands in the amount of $278,619.12, payable semi-annually to the owner, representing rental payments for the city's 24-month use of the property needed for the project. It's very clear why we have to extend this lease at this point, but we'll hear about that in a moment. There are 4 payments, and the dates, the added 3 dates are January 31st, 2020, June 30th, 2020, and January 31st, 2021. Mr. Sachs on number 3.
Yes, thank you for the record, Arnold Sachs. And I'm actually going to keep this very simple. I don't like this landmine here. My question actually regards the last line of paragraph 1 that states this property is required for the completion of the project. And then the last state line on paragraph number 2, the city's 24-month use of the property needed for the project. So, I mean, there's a wealth of difference between the fact that the property would be required for the project. You have to build something on it. The property would be needed for the project. It's not necessarily required. Because I've been involved in a lot of different things that have come before different meetings, and the language that is used in a lot of writing can be very, very deceptive to the public, and they might be thinking it's one thing when it's actually something else. Just those 2 things I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Jimenez.
Good morning. Udi Jimenez, Bureau of Engineering. I'm the Chief Real Estate Officer. This is a lease extension of the field office that is used also to house some of the equipment and material that's necessary for the 6th Street Viaduct project. The project is extending into 2022, and the lease will extend to the point where this should be the final extension of the lease, where the field office will be used and the property will revert back to the existing owner once we're done with it. And this is the last extension.
And the extension is, look, the project's taking longer, Udi, right?
Right.
So we need to extend the related leases accordingly.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Then I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioners Davis and Colose. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Any issue sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Thank you, sir. Let's take agenda item number 5. Agenda item number 5 is a requested tree removal in Council District number 2, 11472 West Laurel Crest Drive, recommending that the board first find that the project is categorically exempt under Article 3, Section 1, Class 3, Category 1 of the city's Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and there is no substantial evidence the proposed project will have significant effect on the environment and is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. Secondly, find that none of the exceptions to the use of the categorical exemption is set forth in Section 15300.2 of state CEQA guidelines apply. Third, specify that Street Services, Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division, located at 1149 South Broadway, is custodian of the documents or other material that constitute the record, or I should say, and other material that constitute the record of proceedings upon which the board's decision is based. And fourth, approve the request for a fee permit to remove 6 interior live oak trees. Tree replacements are required. This was continued a couple of times. Mr. Sachs, you put in a card on number 5.
Thank you again, Arnold Sachs, for the record. And for the record, Arnold Sachs, I did put in a card on number 5. So the project that is categorically exempt from CEQA, is that just this tree removal? doesn't really make sense that you'd have a CEQA hearing on a tree removal. There's got to be more to this item than just this tree. It doesn't mention what the project is going to be that's going to go in it. 11472 West Laurel Crest Drive. That's something I wrote. That's why I was talking about the language that's used in a lot of these items that are written. If you looked at this and you said, well, it's just a tree, it's not just a tree. There's something behind this tree. Maybe it's hiding sideways, you can't see it. Be very careful about what you write here and what you talk about, because you're going to find out, I'm sure they're building some kind of complex here, and they need this space for usage to be able to finish the construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. The first continuance came at the request of the council office. The second continuance came at the request of Streets LA. Mr. Banuelos, when we get to you, I may ask you for just an update on the item procedurally, as far as based on what you know. It's possible that as far as you know, it's ripe for us to make a determination today, but I may inquire about that. In the meantime, I've got some folks that I'm trying to determine whether or not they are attached to the applicant or not. So let's take who I think are not attached to either organized side. Joanne D'Antonio, Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance for Trees. You are first this morning. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, President James and the commissioners. I represented the neighborhood councils on the DUDEC report working group released last December. Its recommendations, which emphasized the importance of tree preservation, were adopted by the Bureau of Public Works in December of last year. This study was financed by CAL FIRE, and I want to emphasize that. CAL FIRE recognizes the value of trees in mitigating the spread of brush fires. No number of thirsty saplings can replace the services performed by mature trees. If we continue to remove these assets, 6 at a time, it all adds up. And we leave ourselves open for disaster. There is a reason these mature trees are protected. Let's protect them.
Tom McWilliams.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Tom McWilliams. I am the homeowner in the house across the street from the proposed project property on Laurel Crest Drive. I've been living there for 18 years now, and when I first moved in 2001, I requested a geological inspection of my property, and one of the main issues that came up, the inspector told me about, was that the hillside across the street from me had been deemed unstable in the past and was prone to landslide, and because of issues with the bias of the soil and other factors. I asked him how that would affect me. He said that if the hillside did come down, it could easily make it across the entire street, but would likely just come short of potentially running into the front of my home. Over the years, there have been many prospective buyers that have done deep soil tests on the hillside, and they've all concluded over the years that is infeasible to build on that property due to complications with the hillside. Since across 2 decades, I've heard issues with disturbing that hillside and the environment and the woodland. I would implore parties involved to please do an environmental impact study to see how this could affect the environment of the hillside and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Diane Zogert? It's possible I misread your last name?
I think you did pretty darn good.
Oh, thank you.
So President James, commissioners, and it's good to see nice to see some new faces since I was here the last time. I guess it's been a long time. I actually own a modest home down the street from the subject property on Laurel Crest Drive. I am deeply concerned that the lack of analysis of the environmental impacts that this project proposes. Using the protected tree ordinance as a replacement for an environmental analysis is insufficient. But let's talk about that for a minute. I am a horticulture consultant. I've been doing this for over 20 years as a profession, and I have spent a lot of hours dealing with the misguided planting choices of others. This notion that you can reduce the planting space of a property, quadruple the number of trees to put back in that smaller planting space is just wrong. There's a tree carrying capacity built into every piece of land out there. So it is highly unlikely that a site which currently carries 6 oak trees would accommodate 18 added oak trees, especially when you're going to add in a very large house with all the amenities that are going to come with that into the neighborhood. And in fact, CFAC sent a letter to this board back in October of 2017 making this very same point for a property in the same neighborhood.
2 minutes.
Wow, that goes by fast.
Thank you. Kathy Arkell?
Hello and thank you. My name is Kathy Arkell, and I live on Laurel Crest Drive. I've been there for 27 years, and I walk by and drive by the property during that time. And I have to say that watching my community and the tree disappearance for the building of these homes that has not made any placement or consideration for the environment or the trees is alarming. And the rate of what it's been changing has been shocking. So I am here just to say that, you know, I appreciate that the wildlife that we have there, the birds, the deer, we have a lot of that in our community. And they're, where they live and where this little safe haven that they have is being greatly reduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha Garcia Lomas?
Hello, my name is Natasha Garcia Lomas, and I am the owner of the property right above the proposed development. And I wanted to talk about how concerned I am about how large this development is and how my new neighbor is sort of maximizing his plot line, and he's building to the property lines, which also have other trees and other wildlife. And I don't know if you know this, but coastal trees, the roots don't grow deep down, they travel from side to side. So we're at risk of losing not just the 6 trees that are in his lot, but the 8 neighboring trees. Let's say you guys want to hug a tree. We're looking at you having to have about 5 friends to just like wrap yourselves around these trees. They're live, they're mature, there's a lot of wildlife. That's why we bought the property. I'm not anti my neighbor building a home. We just want him to really consider the impact he has on this plot of, sort of last plot of wilderness that's left here in the Santa Monica region. And I really urge you to look into the approval for this. I've not had an opportunity to also look at how this is going to affect my foundation, I live right above. There's a huge hillside. It's being excavated. It supports houses right above it, and I'd really love some time to be able to protect myself. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The remaining cards I have are from Jamie Hall and Travis Longcore, which both represent the Sunshine Hill Residents Association, and Larry Schlossberg, who is the applicant. Mr. Banuelos from Streets LA. Why don't you just go through your presentation this morning, then we'll hear from the applicant and then the protest. Regarding procedurally, Mr. Banuelos, there was a request by the council office for the continuance back in June that you were notified of, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the subsequent request came from came from Streets LA for us to continue it for an additional amount of time that took us to today, correct?
That's correct.
Any other requests for continuances beyond today that we have outstanding other than what may happen in the hearing?
Other than a few letters we received, no.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, City Attorney, Dr. Campos. Hector Banuelos here with the Bureau of Street Services, Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division. What we have before us is a request for a property owner to construct a two-story single-family residence at 11472 West Laurel Crest Drive in the community of Studio City. The proposed single-family residence will have approximately 2,800 square feet of residential floor area on a vacant property that measures approximately 10,830 square feet. The lot has steep to moderate topography, and grading and slope stability measures will be required pursuant to the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. There was a site assessment performed by a landscape architect, which identified some live oak trees. There's some dispute on the species, but there are native oak trees on the property. There are a total of 9 protected trees on the property. However, one of those 9 trees is dead, was verified dead in the field. There are 6 trees proposed for removal in order to construct the home and to perform necessary grading for construction of the home. There are 4 trees located within the footprint of the home, and 2 trees are located in the immediate adjacent area and will be impacted by the grading, retaining walls, and other construction work for construction of the home. If approved, the applicant shall plant 24 24-inch box size coast live or live oak trees on the property. And the Streets LA has determined that the project is category exempt pursuant to the City of Los Angeles Environmental Quality Act guidelines. The Council District 2, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, and the Community Forestry Advisory Committee were informed of the project and the tree removal permit request. The Council office has not opposed nor is in support of this project. Any questions?
Yes. Before we go to our speakers, Commissioner Cabello has a question of you, Mr. Banuelos.
I might have additional questions, but this is just a quick one. One of our speakers, Ms. Garcia Lomas, referenced the adjacent trees to the property that are not actually on the property lines, or I think she called them coastal trees, where roots are spread out instead of going down, and that this would have a detrimental effect on those trees. Is that your assessment as well?
Well, there's going to be some impact, or maybe some impact to the trees for the grading that's going to be occurring on the property. The impact was addressed on the tree report, and it's my understanding that the impact will be minimal and the tree should be able to survive.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Banuelos? We don't. Mr. Banuelos, you can have a seat. Actually, let's go to Mr. Hall because we've heard the summary of what the applicant's applying for. Mr. Hall, we'll hear from you on the protest, and then we'll give the applicant a chance to respond accordingly. As others have heard me say over the years, when we have real parties in interest, and that would include potential litigants, We don't put a time limit, the 2-minute time limit on, but Mr. Hall, you've been here many times. You've heard me give the same admonition. You could probably give it back to me, but and I simply just don't want people to repeat themselves, because when they start to repeat themselves, I think we've heard everything that they have to offer. Sure. I would just ask you for just a quick estimate of how much time you think you need.
I'd say 6 minutes, 6 to 7, something like that. So my name is Jamie Hall. I am a land use and environmental attorney with Channel Law Group, and I represent the Sunshine Hill Residents Association. So you're here today, and you have to actually make two decisions. And the very first one has to be made initially before you can even get to the second one, and that is whether or not this project is exempt from CEQA. And so forgive me, but it's really important, and I need to explain the law here. First of all, you have to understand that while single-family homes generally are exempt from CEQA, there are exceptions to the rule. And the exception that's applicable here is the location exception. And so when a project is located in a particularly sensitive environment, it cannot be deemed exempt from CEQA. And so it's not any particularly sensitive environment. It has to be an environmental resource of critical concern that's been designated and mapped by a state, local, or federal agency pursuant to law. So it has to be clearly defined, and it has to be officially adopted. So here, this project is within the Santa Monica Mountain Zone. And the legislature itself has told us that this zone, the Santa Monica Mountain Zone, is an environmental resource of critical concern. Literally, in the second sentence of the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy Act, they describe the zone in the most amazing language to talk about the resources that the zone provides. So, we have the location exception, and the next thing becomes, it changes the standard of review. So if you're within this environmental resource of critical concern, you then an objector like my client must only show that there is a fair argument that the project may have an impact on the environment. And that's a lot different than what maybe you used to be. A lot of times the cities are given deference, right? But this is the inverse of that. So all we have to show is that a fair argument exists. And even if you are presented with evidence that there is no potential impact on the environment, you have to err on the side of caution. And the courts have said that the fair argument standard sets a, quote, low threshold for the preparation of an MND or an EIR. A city must do an environmental analysis, even though it may be presented with other evidence that a project would not have a significant effect on the environment. So here, in order to show you that this project may have a significant effect on the environment, we've gone above and beyond what we normally do when we come here. We have commissioned 2 expert reports, and they are attached to my supplemental objection letter as Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. And Dr. Travis Longhor is the principal of the first expert report, and he is with Land Protection Partners. Excuse me. Land Protection Partners. Dr. Longhor actually has taught at USC, and he's currently teaching at UCLA, and he's been an author of many environmental review articles in peer-reviewed journals. And here are some of the things that Dr. Longhor has said this project will cause. And there are no existing regulatory compliance measures at the city that address these issues. Number 1, impacts to coast live oak California walnut woodland. So it's not just, we have to understand the resource that is going to be impacted. And it's not just the coast live oak. It is the coast live oak California walnut woodland. And Dr. Longhor can speak about this in further detail, but these 2 species both exist on the site, and they are what's called a vegetation community, and they provide environmental services to a whole range of wildlife. And so I will let Dr. Longhor explain that in more detail. But the project would reduce the habitat area by 30%. Wildlife numbers are permanently reduced each time habitat is lost through development. Replacing individual trees doesn't replace lost habitat. And so the second thing I want to note that Dr. Longhora has mentioned in his report is that the actual species of the oak was misidentified by the applicant's arborist. They said there were interior oaks, when in reality these are simply coast live oaks. So what is proposed here is to provide mitigation trees for a species that's not being removed. So there's just a mistake there on the arborist report. The other thing is increased lighting impacts wildlife. There is clear evidence that when you introduce new lighting, that actually impacts the wildlife that exists in a community. And the city does not have any regulatory compliance measures to address this situation. It's sort of a regulatory hole that the city has. The other thing is that glass poses collision hazards for birds. And again, the city has no regulatory compliance measures to address that potential impact. And also construction noise would cause adverse impacts to wildlife. The second report is from Dan Cooper, and he's the president of Cooper Ecological Monitoring, and he's been involved in biological issues and been the author of many reports as well. And he actually visited the site, and he stated and concluded that this project constitutes a nesting bird refuge. And he also concluded that the project is part of a linkage zone and contains a wildlife corridor. He concluded that the loss of habitat would reduce overall population of mule deer in the Santa Monica Mountains. So I first think we need to look at this very carefully. Is this project exempt from CEQA? We've certainly demonstrated a fair argument that the project may have an impact on the environment. The other issue, which was not in the letter, but I want to bring up, is that if you go back, we pulled yesterday actually, the geological soils report letters for this project, and what one of the speakers said previously is true. For over a decade, there had been these reports done that demonstrated there was a landslide on this site, and that's why this site has not been developed. The applicant has hired a new geologist who disagrees, right? So we have dueling experts here. We have some experts who said this is a landslide, and we have a new expert that says it's not a landslide. But again, the fair argument standard says that when you're presented with two pieces of information, you have to err on the side of caution. And that means that this project cannot be deemed exempt from CEQA. So if you were to conclude that this project was exempt, and which we certainly hope you don't, but if you were to conclude that, then you're faced with the second issue, and that is always the hard one, but eventually we're going to have to resolve it, is does reasonable development require the removal of these trees? The city did not give us a definition for that word in the protected tree ordinance. And I think that is what has happened over the years, is that we've sort of kicked the can and didn't want to address this difficult problem, and we simply look to other regulations to kind of be the default as to what reasonable development is. So the baseline hillside ordinance sets a maximum amount that a house can be, right? And that's what the applicant has proposed here, the maximum that is allowed under the baseline hillside ordinance. That is not a substitute for a conclusion that this is reasonable development. What the city was trying to do when they adopted the protected tree ordinance was provide the board with the discretion to determine on a case-by-case basis whether or not a project removal is necessary in order to allow for reasonable development. And I would suggest, and I've suggested this repeatedly, that we should look at the homes to the east, to the west, across the street, and behind the house to look at, is this a reasonable sized home? This is a really large home compared to the other homes in the area. The house to the east is 1,350 square feet. The house to the west is 1,272 square feet. And across the street, it's 2,132 square feet. The other thing I would like to point out here is that there's a large backyard that's proposed. That's actually causing the removal of 3 trees in and of itself, including the largest tree, which is tree number 13, which is a magnificent tree. It's 24 inches in diameter, and it's 40 feet high. It is a beautiful tree. If those retaining walls were relocated so that they were closer to the house, and we didn't have such a large flat backyard, we could save additional trees. This is something that you should look at. And I also just want to point out the other thing here.
You're at your time, Mr.
Okay, one final thing is that the alternatives analysis in the memorandum, the staff report that you've been provided, consists of a single sentence, and I think we can do better than that. It says, the location, size, and species of the trees negate the possibility of tree preservation or relocation. That's not enough. We need to do a better job at alternatives analysis to determine whether or not reasonable development justifies the removal of these trees.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Longcore, you have a card in.
We have somebody's glasses up here, too.
Somebody left their glasses up there. Mr. Hall, there's your glasses. Oh, they've been there for a while.
All the time.
Would you hand those to Dr. Campos over there? Oh, they may be my moods. Okay. Oh, they're yours.
Okay, there we go.
Well, in that case, we won't charge you for. I was going to charge Mr. Kareem Zadeh for them back, but we won't charge you, ma'am. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I have 6 points. I'll be as fast as I can on these. I appreciate your time. First, I hold a PhD in biogeography from UCLA. I have 21 years experience reviewing biological resource reports for compliance. I've taught environmental impact analysis and the natural history and ecology of California undergraduate and graduate levels, both at UCLA and at USC. Point 2, the trees on site are not Quercus wislitzini, as is in the landscape architect's report. I appreciate that Streets LA kind of hedged and said there's debate. There's no debate about this. I'll wager my reputation on it. If it were, it would be an extension of the range of that species to a lower elevation. The only ones in the Santa Monica Mountains, in the eastern Santa Monica Mountains, are in Griffith Park. It's chaparral oak. This isn't it. So we should just correct that for the record. The next point is that the proper vegetation mapping for this site is coast live oak, California walnut, woodland. This is, I use these words very carefully because they're a recognized sensitive natural community by the state of California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They have a whole list, and these are called plant associations, vegetation associations, and this is on it, and the most recent list was published in 2018, and so this is something that's incumbent on the city when it reviews documents like this to know the proper mapping and the proper habitat types, and then be able to flag those as sensitive resources, sensitive natural communities, so it has state recognition there. The reason that's so important, and the thing is we can't put this on Streets LA and Urban Forest Division with the Protected Tree Ordinance. It's just not their job to be ecologists, right? This is the job of a city biologist. And unfortunately at the moment we don't have a city biologist. So once you recognize that, loss of a sensitive natural community recognized by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife is a trigger under Los Angeles' CEQA threshold guidelines for a significant impact. So once you understand what the trees are, what the vegetation association is, and the fact that you're losing it, you're facing kind of no decision but acknowledging the reality that there's a significant adverse impact here unless you do review and mitigate those impacts. Point 5, the city's protected tree ordinance is insufficient to offset significant impacts to a natural community, and Mr. Hall mentioned this. Replacing the individual trees doesn't replace a whole habitat, and that's why you have to understand and map these and understand what are the sensitive natural communities. That's an area. You can't mitigate an area with a number of trees, and you're also not mitigating the fact that it's an oak walnut woodland together. So that doesn't, as a regulatory mechanism, get you out of the fact that you have a sensitive natural community there. So I would argue that this is improperly being proposed by the city as exempt. It's very clear there would be a significant adverse impact on the environment if you don't go through the CEQA process and determine what that is and mitigate that impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before we go to the applicant, any questions from Mr. Hall or Mr. Longcore? Okay, thank you. Larry Schlossberg. Same request, sir. We don't have a time limit on you. Just ask that you, once you start to repeat yourself, we may ask questions.
Okay,
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Larry Schlossberg. I'm the owner of the property. I'm also happen to be an architect, so I'm the architect of the project as well. It is a single-family home for myself and my family, my wife and 4 children amongst the 2 of us. Just about the time I bought the property, which is about 2 years ago, the city tightened the hillside zoning regulations, and the house meets or exceeds all of those regulations. There's less excavation than is allowed. There's less export that is allowed. The retaining walls are lower than what is permitted. There was an earlier speaker mentioned that the property is built to the property lines. It is not, or the house is built to the property lines. It is not. There are, of course, setback requirements that are exceeded in many areas. On the 2 sides, it is 6 feet from the property lines, but in the back and front, it is significantly more from the property lines. The trees in question sort of form a group, like right in the middle of the site. So
Are you including, when you talk about the trees that form the group, the tree that Mr. Hall referenced that would be in the backyard?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. And by the way, speaking to that, that particular tree actually is in the footprint of the house. And also speaking to the backyard issue, there is a flat area behind the house. Much of the reason for that is that the city LA Department of Building Safety and Grading requires at least 15-foot wide flat area upslope from any construction. So that was achieved, and that results in the flat area or backyard behind. Let's see, there was some talk about the geological conditions of the site. I did hire Grover Hollingsworth, who is experts in the geology of the mountains, and they did extensive test pits and testings, and there was an earlier report done decades ago that suggested that there might have been an ancient landslide on the western portion of the site, the southwest. They determined that that was not the case, and in fact, the bedrock over most of the site is just 1 to 3 or 4 feet below the surface. And of course, the report was submitted to grading and approved. As far as the mitigation measures of the replacements of the trees, I agree that 24 trees is a lot for that site. It's not a big site. It's about 10,800 square feet. I would be happy to replace it with fewer larger trees. I think the ordinance requires tree replacement 4 to 1 in 24-inch size boxes. I would be happy, and I think it would create a better environment if we put in fewer, say, 48-inch box trees, even a couple of 60-inch box trees that are spaced further apart, so they will grow better. Let's see. There's no pool. There's no tennis court. There's no paved.
And sir, I'm sorry, I just want to make that a little louder for the record.
I'm sorry.
Even though we know the answers to this, we are making an oral record. People, particularly in a case like this, will go back and listen. You said there's no pool, no tennis court. Go ahead.
Correct. No pool, no tennis court, no paved patio areas. I purposely minimize paved areas so that water can absorb into the ground. the area, this area in Studio City, is actually a fairly densely developed area, developed for many, many decades. I think my lot is perhaps one of the few remaining empty lots in the area. The one next door to me is empty. I actually don't know of any others. So this is extremely densely developed, with thousands of homes nearby on lots of varying sizes. Some a little bit smaller than mine, some a little bit bigger. And again, I'd be happy to condition any approval on a different way of replacing the trees. That would be, I think, actually better for my house and better for the trees. And I think that's all. I thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. I don't know that I have any questions for you right now.
I just wanted to clarify in summary.
Mr. Davis.
I want to clarify in summary your testimony before us. You've kind of responded to some of the biological research testimony that has been given. And I wanted to understand that you're saying you're flexible in terms of trying to accommodate some of the issues that have been raised in this hearing as it relates to the plans in your property.
Well, as I said, I'm flexible with the replacement tree numbers, sizes, and placement. The footprint of the house is difficult to be flexible with because there are zoning restraints in the front. Of course, there are zoning restraints in the back, and I don't mean just setbacks, but certain height restraints with 45-degree angle envelopes coming off from the property lines. So there's not a lot of flexibility in how the house is placed. And as a matter of fact, the large tree that was mentioned, it's to the eastern side of the site. So if the house were located towards the western side of the site, that's the steeper portion of the site and would require additional excavation and additional export, and actually may not even be possible because of the retaining wall.
Can the retaining wall go on the outside of the tree and the tree be preserved as a part of your property?
I'm sorry, which tree are you speaking of?
Can the retaining wall go behind the tree? My understanding is the tree has to be removed so that you can put up the retaining wall. Is that correct?
No, actually, the tree that we're talking about is in the footprint of the house.
Okay. And where's the retaining wall in relationship to the tree?
To the tree we're speaking of?
Yes, sir.
It's away from it. I don't even believe it's in the drip line of that tree we're speaking of.
So the tree is in the footprint of the house, right?
Yes.
And you don't want to keep the tree. You want to cut it down.
Well, I would love to keep the tree, but to build the house,
oh, I see.
Because it's in the footprint of the house.
I see.
And shifting the house.
So that would cause you to have to shrink the plans for the house if you kept the tree.
Well,
you'd have to go back to the architect and do another design.
Yeah, which is me.
You are the architect. Okay.
Yeah. Shrinking the footprint of the house, actually, I don't know would necessarily help because I still have to have the 15-foot flat area behind the house, which would go very close to the trunk of the tree, and under its drip line and all the roots below it, and shifting some of the mass of the house, as I said, to the west increases the construction on the steeper portion of the site, which would cause more excavation, more export of soil, and might even be difficult, if not impossible, in some engineering ways, because the retaining walls would have to be higher.
Have there been issues with landslides in that property or in the area?
No, not that I know of. I mean, the geology report does not indicate any actual landslides, and as I mentioned, the geology report prepared for my design says that there was no ancient landslide debris on the site. And they explained why it perhaps looked to a geologist 20 years ago like there might have been some, but the geologist said it is not such. As I said, the bedrock is just a few feet below the top of the soil, and the soils report, geological report, was approved by the city.
So basically, in summary, the issues that have been raised have caused a need to redesign the house if in fact you were to entertain some of the concerns that have been raised. You'd have to go back and do another design for the home. Is that correct?
Well, some of the issues that were raised, to address those, there could not be a home built on that site at all.
I see.
For instance, the issues of wildlife habitat and light from the house. And again, in terms of the issues of light and glass with birds flying into it, right. This is a single empty lot in a neighborhood of thousands of houses, completely built out. I shouldn't say single empty lot. The lot next door also is vacant, but it's not a large lot itself. And I think that in talking with previous owners, that this was not developed previously because it's one of the steeper lots in the neighborhood. And
your neighborhood is not a neighborhood that has an architectural theme, is it?
No.
Okay. Each individual home is unique
they're
based upon the owner's
They're all very
design.
eclectic, I guess, is the theme. They're all.
Beg your pardon?
Eclectic, I guess, is the theme. They're all.
I see.
They're all very, very different.
I see.
So, anyways, as I was saying, to address some of the biological concerns for wildlife habitat and the light and the problem with birds flying into glass, following those would preclude building on the property at all. And I do want to point out again that there are hundreds or thousands of homes in the neighborhood. The neighborhood is completely built out except for, as I said, this lot.
Is your home larger, perhaps, than the other homes in the property?
I don't know. I don't know what the size of the homes are. There are some homes, a couple lots down, that look large to me, but the size of the house in terms of square footage does meet the recently reduced allowance by the city hillside ordinance.
So in summary, your goal was simply to build a house on the property that you purchased that you felt would have appropriately been placed in that particular lot, notwithstanding any kind of accommodation for the neighbors and their lots and their properties, that you just felt that this project would fit appropriately on your lot, and you don't feel that it has any imposition, if you will, on other properties in the surrounding area.
Speaking to the neighbors to the west, to the west is another empty lot, which is up for sale now. To the east, there's a 15-foot easement, or I should say that 15-foot wide strip of property which belongs to the property above me, and then I'm set back 6 feet from that. So I'm actually set back from the property line on the east 21 feet from the neighbor.
For the record, this neighborhood is called Sunshine Hills?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
At the front, the house is actually built somewhat higher on the hill. There are limitations to building, towards the front property
And
line.
when you say it's higher on the hill, it's higher than on the hill than other residents? Is
No.
that, oh, just,
It's
just higher on the hill?
It's not built down near the street.
Got it.
So it's higher on the hill.
Does it give you a view as a result of it being on the hill?
It does give me a view, and it allows me to meet the zoning requirements.
Now, do other neighbors have a hillside view? Are you the only one?
I believe that other neighbors do have hillside views.
So there are other properties that, to your knowledge, also have and enjoy a view?
Oh, yes, I believe so. And the house above my property,
I see.
Has a spectacular view.
Got it.
It happened to be for sale 6 months ago, 8 months ago, so I went to open house. It has a fantastic view. However, my proposed house, its roof is significantly lower than that property, so the view is intact over my house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Sir, I don't have any questions for you. Have a seat, don't go far. A couple of questions and then a couple of statements. Mr. Jordan, Mr. Hall has, and Mr. Longcore collectively have made a record regarding their position on Streets LA's designation of this item as a categorically exempt single-family residence. They've made their objections to it and the reasons for it. Some of those reasons, I think, on first blush, by me, have some merit, enough that it raises a concern in my mind. Is the city attorney's office, or has the city attorney's office, are they working on a position that might be different than that as described by Mr. Hall?
Yes, I think so. There are a number of matters pending in the city at various different stages, including matters that get appealed from bodies such as this to the city council. And my understanding is that in one or more of those matters, this issue of areas that have been mapped and whether that is sufficient to take it out of the categorical exemption is something that is currently being briefed, studied, appealed, and or litigated. And those issues were, just for the record, were also raised in the letter that we received, although they didn't speak today, from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy.
I was going to reference that as well.
Yeah, Mr. Edelman raised the same issue.
So I understand that, and I've got a couple of reasons that I want to put on the record that I'm going to recommend, colleagues, that we put this matter over. I know that may frustrate some people, but there are a number of issues that have to be dealt with here. First of all, there is some work that needs to be done still, in my mind, before I take a position on a number of these. Right now we have this one on Laurel Crest in front of us, regarding Mr. Hall's and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy's positions on categorical exemption that could be opposite position of a position taken by our city attorney's office, in which case we'll need to have that information in front of us when we make a decision that we're being asked to make today. Secondly, I also wonder what it might mean that the categorical exemption, assuming we, depending on how we rule, for lack of a better term, given the two positions that we might face from the city attorney's office versus the protest to this piece of property, what it might mean that Street Services has already designated this as a categorical exemption. And thirdly, in communications that I heard from Mr. Hall, whether he intended to or not, Mr. Longcore to a lesser extent, and in the exchange between Mr. Schlossberg and Commissioner Davis, I heard opportunities for resolution based on the conversation that was taking place. And this board has had, for the past 6 years, a remarkable record of ending up with resolution on tree removal items related to developments in communities like this, and have avoided time after time after time litigation. And from listening to Mr. Hall and Mr. Longcore and the property applicant and Commissioner Davis's discussion, I heard some areas of opportunity for resolution. Now, there are also some areas that, because Mr. Schlossberg is an architect, sound like there are some areas where there's not wiggle room, but in other parts there might be. And so for that reason, I want to give this thing probably 21 days. Dr. Campos, what are we on 3 weeks from today?
That would put you to Monday, August 26th.
I would rather, oh man, I can do it on August 26th. Ted, no?
As the board knows, I'm scheduled to be out of the office.
What's the following week?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be back in the country on that day, but due to a medical issue, I won't be here at that
I don't want to do it on the 28th. 28th is a crowded agenda. The 30th is the Friday before Labor Day, and that's frustrating for people. What's the next meeting?
Next meeting after that would be Wednesday, September 4th. If you'd like to move it to a Monday, that would be Monday, September 9th.
Can we do it on the 30th? Mr. Schlossberg, it's the Friday before Labor Day. Mr. Hall? Okay. Mr. Jordan, are you back?
I'll be back in the country. Having taken so much time off, I'll be here on the 30th.
Okay. Yeah, I'd prefer to do it the 30th. We won't have a lot of other stuff on the agenda that day, so I think that's the best time. We've essentially had most of the hearing this morning anyway. So let's put it for August 30th, so we'll have some answers to, and I will have some answers to these questions, and my colleagues will have access to that as well, and they can do their own work on it too. So that'll be the order then, without objection, that we'll put the item over to Friday, August 30th. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Agenda item number 4 is from Sanitation, Task Order Solicitation number A3-1803, Jacobs Engineering Group and CH2M Hill Engineers Incorporated, recommending that the board first authorize the Director and General Manager of Sanitation or his designee to award Task Order Solicitation number A3-18-03 to Jacobs Engineering Group and CH2M Hill Engineers, the contract numbers listed, from the Sanitation On-Call Consultant list to provide computer technical support. Secondly, approve a total budget of $1,168,750 to fund programming and engineering support services. And third, approve the term of engagement for 2 years, starting from the date that Sanitation issues a notice to proceed. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Does that mean you want to speak or you don't? Okay. Mr. Sachs waves it. All right, Mr. Lee.
Good morning, President, Commissioner, and the Bureau Representative, City Attorney, and Dr. Campbell. I'm Charles Lee from LA SAM, and basically we are requested to fund the engineering and programming service from the professionals to do any LA SAM, basically LA Wings, any changes from operation and any upgrade, and for 2 years.
Okay. Commissioner Caloza, we'll start with you.
Thank you, President James. Hi, Mr. Lee. I had a question about the status of funding. So you mentioned that this contract lasts for 2 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in part of your board report, it says 2019 and 2020, and then the second column says future years.
Yes.
Is that something that's common to, it's a little ambiguous in terms of the years stated?
Sorry. The reason being is when we submit the request is in the beginning of 2019. So actually, the end of 2018, the beginning. So it's across the budget cycle, and the intent was for when LA Wings issued the maintenance NTP, say initially we expect around summertime this year, but they delayed to next year summertime. So that's why we try to make it a little bit open, and because we do not know when will we issue the NTP to maintenance for LA Wings project. That's the reason.
But so the contract is for 24 months, so can we just, on this chart, right, for instance, 2020 to 2021?
Yeah.
Okay, so can we amend that so that it's more clear?
Sure.
Since it's, I think a little vague to write just future years, and maybe you've written that in the past and I just haven't seen it.
Sure.
That would be helpful. And then the other question I had, and you typically have this for past board reports that you've done for TOSs, but was this specific TOS approved by the program review committee or the program review director?
So I'm not quite understand your question. You try to say it's the programming. We try to ask the consultant provide professionals after the Honeywell project go into the maintenance phase, and then we will maybe we will ask some programming consultant to come into the board to fix some deficiency and for the operation to support operation.
Sorry, let me clarify. So typically when you guys have brought, TOSs to board, sanitation will go through the program review committee, the PRC, or the program review by director, the PRD, before you bring this item before board, just so we can see that, it went through the proper process. And so did this item go before those?
Yes, we go to the PRD to get Enrique's approval before we issue the TOS. Actually, it's in parallel, the TOS and the board report, everything at the same time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Can I also suggest to make that change to this board report? It is helpful when you guys write that in your report, just so, again, we can see the process. You guys have been really good about doing that in past board reports. If you guys can just do it for this one, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Caloza. Commissioner Cabello.
Thank you, President James. Just a question for our city attorney. Mr. Jordan, to Commissioner Caloza's suggested amendment from changing future years to 2020, 2021, are we going to have any issues if we extend past that date by locking in those numbers? So she's referencing on board report page 4.
I see the indication. I think providing the clarification 2020 to 2021 is consistent with the report, so I think that's a good recommendation. If the work is going to exceed beyond 2021, then I think for clarification or for letting the board be involved, I think it would be good for the Bureau to come back at that time and say, back in 2019, we thought this was going to be in 2019, 2020, 2020 to 2021, but here we are needing to go into 2022. I think we would probably have the Bureau come back and just provide that to the board so that we don't go beyond what the board would be approving today.
But it doesn't prohibit us from going beyond if needed. The Bureau would have to just come back and request an additional year. Is that correct?
I think that would be the better way to do it, yes.
But it doesn't prohibit us. I just want to be
Oh,
very,
no,
very,
the
very
board,
clear
the
on
board
that.
will not be prevented in
yeah.
any way from providing that additional authority to go into 2022.
Right. And the only reason I bring this up, I agree, and I think it's great that they come back because that holds them accountable and it has a lot of transparency for the public.
Yes.
But the only concern I have is that this is major equipment that's being consulted on that is not going away. This is maintenance. This is things that sanitation actually needs and that we need that to work and function. So I just want to make sure we're not being overly prescriptive. But I like the idea of having this very transparent process.
I agree. In future years, we don't want to be overly prescriptive, but we also, want to make sure we have an understanding that future years, what that means. It's not 10 years out. It's.
I think the legal term is loosey-goosey. Thank you.
Yes, well said.
Thank you, Commissioner Grillo. Dr. Campos, you wanted to add to that? I just didn't want you to do it while Commissioner Jordan was speaking.
No, it's perfectly fine if the expectation is for the Bureau of Sanitation to come back to the board to ask for an amendment for this item. They will do so at the end of 2021, but there is high likelihood that they will require to come back because there is going to be some funding in 21-22 fiscal year. So that's already an automatic understanding.
Okay, thank you. So then that would be an amendment from Commissioner Caloza. So you're moving it as amended. And I also like Commissioner Caloza's suggestion, Mr. Lee, regarding reference to the PRC or the PRD, whichever is appropriate.
Sure.
It's always helpful in the board report. And so that's Commissioner Cabello's motion as amended. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4 as amended. Any issue sending 4 as amended forthwith? We'll send number 4 as amended forthwith. Thank you, Dr. Campos. Have we cleared the desk on the voting items?
Yes, you have.
Okay. Mr. Cirillo, you're here on our Cisco update.
Yes.
On number 7.
All right.
And Cisco, by the way, is not the name of a company. It is, but not as it is for us today. Cisco is an acronym for Construction Services Contract. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, and Commissioner Caloza and I discussed that briefly at our last briefing, and we're kind of indicating that maybe it's time to look for another name for the next Cisco.
Yeah, well, I give that admonition every single time because people always...
Because it is a little confusing. So. Okay, with that, let me get into the report here. So what we have here is a quarterly report for our Cisco 10 contract. Yes, we are on our 10th Cisco contract, and the Cisco contract is a competitively bid contract approximately every 3 years, which is used for wastewater treatment plant and collection system work, as well as Prop O work. And it's work that is somewhat urgent in nature that needs to be expedited. And I would say for relatively smaller size projects, we've been using this contract for a number of decades now, and I think it's proven an effective tool for the Bureau of Sanitation to have work done in a timely manner when we don't have time to go through the regular bid and award process. So this contract is a 3-year duration contract. It expires in April of 21. So we have a few more years left on the contract. We've exhausted about 44% of the time. On the flip side, the ceiling for the contract is $15 million, and we've actually authorized about $12.6 million out of the 15 already. So we're tracking ahead of the time. You can see on the report on page 2 that we are actually we have actually expended about 84% of the budget when only 44% of the time has been expended. So we're spending the money a little faster than the time.
You know what a new name could be?
No, but I'll be happy to write it down.
Consco. Were you thinking the same thing I was? You said Costco.
I was thinking Costco, but then it would be the same issue with just with a different.
Yeah,
that'll I'm thinking Consco. C-O-N-S. Consco?
Yeah.
They'll still think we're saying
Well,
Costco.
actually.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll give it some thought.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
We have a few years to figure it out because because Cisco 11 will be at board in a couple of weeks, and it's too late to change it because
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
already gone out and advertised for Cisco
Okay.
11. But that's where I was going with this, actually, on the expenditures. Even though we've expended 84% of the budget, which is a little faster, as I mentioned, than the time, we're really in no danger of running out of money in the event that Cisco 11 is adopted at board in a couple of weeks, because that will give us a brand new Cisco contract for another $15 million for another 3 years, which we can then start spending money out of that contract. So we're hopeful that that gets adopted at board in a few weeks, and we'll be okay with the budget. With respect to the business inclusion program utilization, all categories look really well, are doing really well, except for the small business enterprise category, which is about minus 8.8%. We have been actively looking at the list of subcontractors that Murray has listed for that category for SBE, and we will make an effort to reach out to Murray so they can reach out to those subs. We're actually starting a partnering session, a regular partnering session with Murray. Typically for our bid and award contracts, we'll do what's known as a quarterly partnering session. We're going to do the same thing with our Murray contract. Therefore, we can talk to them about issues such as this and how they might be able to improve their SBE utilization on this contract. That being said, the last attachment is just basically a breakdown of every task work order that's been issued to date under Cisco 10. That includes anything over $150,000 that we've come to board to get approval for, and then anything under $150,000 that was issued at the city engineer's approval. So it just kind of shows you each task work order, the status, and where the money has been allocated. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have one question. On the this kind of the first summary page.
Yes.
Yeah, that one. When you're looking at MBE, WBE, SBE utilization, you've had success in every area but one. And the one is this SBE, where you're down 8.8. I mean, you've doubled disabled veteran, which is great. 6 times on emerging, I should say. You've more than doubled WBE. You've almost doubled MBE. But SBE is low. And here's my concern about it. Many folks will advocate, and I don't disagree with them, that if we were to, and I don't want to get into a whole other area here, but let me just provide the foundation for my question. Folks will advocate with evidentiary support that if you, rather than set goals, but set a mandate for subcontracting to SBEs, period, your MBE and WBE and DVBE numbers will go up because you have actual illegal mandate, which you can do legally on SBEs. My concern is that data that you have here might be used to refute that. Because what I would think is if you're up on MBE and up on WBE and up on DVBE, you would also be up on SBE. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Cirillo?
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes sense. I was kind of surprised as well because you would think that most of the MBEs and WBEs would also be SBEs. So it is a little strange.
Maybe not so much anymore.
Right.
Can I just do a point of clarification? Because I know that Commissioner Davis is going to really want to weigh in, and I'm going to be very, very quick. So, President James, when you say mandate SBEs and you'll assume that all the rest go up, do you also have the goals for WBEs and for...
Yes.
Okay, because
Always.
my fear is that then becomes the SBEs go up, but at the cost of the WBEs
By the way,
and the MBEs.
By the way, my thought in this, and this is something that people have brought to us, and it's come from DWP and LAWA and other parts of the city that have done this. And I put this on the table somewhat daringly, but because I see this number, the goals would still be there. But what's interesting about what they have proposed is what's different than what we, and I know I'm making Ted uneasy over there. Sorry. What they have proposed is an actual mandate of an SBE Because you can do that legally without violating the
Correct.
state law.
That is correct. You can
But-
set goals there.
Yeah, but you can't mandate legally an MBEW. And the theory was, if we mandate the SBE, then all the other numbers will go up. And you can couple it with whatever goals you want and to still get there. But there's been this debate that's been going on in the city now for as long as I've been here. And my concern was seeing this time, and Commissioner Davis may want to talk to this because he's done extensive research in this area, but seeing the SBE number go down made me a little nervous.
Well, what we have in the city of Los Angeles is a bifurcated implementation of systems that seek to include in each of these areas. And so given the laws as they are, that we cannot make a preference based upon race and gender, we oftentimes, luckily, end up with some minority inclusion and some women inclusion, and yet we have various bureaus and departments that implement different systems. As you've suggested, LAWA has the program that you've just suggested, that they do set a goal of 20% small businesses, and we would hope that if they're getting small businesses in Los Angeles, given the demographics of Los Angeles, that the result of that would also be people who look like Los Angeles. Unfortunately, in some circumstances, as we see cases presented to us here in the board, there are oftentimes we have SBEs with nobody from the areas that look like Los Angeles. So again, I don't know to what degree we can be certain, but certainly LAWA, and I would think there are a couple of other departments in the city who have used that system and have witnessed some increase of that. We just have to be vigilant in terms of our expectations. And our goal is that we conceptually would like to have inclusion of Los Angelenos, and we don't mean some Los Angelenos, we mean all of them. So while we don't violate the law, at the same time we are clear as the employer that our expectation is that Los Angelenos, small businesses, minority businesses, and women businesses would be included in the work that we do. And that's how we have to implement that.
Okay. No, thank you for that, Commissioner Davis. Because I think our goal here, we all have the same goal.
Yes.
What I just wanted to throw out was a little bit of a topic of discussion on how we get there. And that number you had in your report made me a little nervous. So, okay, we'll keep an eye on it.
Maybe we should look at that system. Some have done it.
Yeah, they'll keep an eye on that with.
I can also go.
Cases you all have come to us and you have used that system because you wanted to try it, and Con Ed has worked with you in that regard. So it's an issue of deciding if you want to try one of the multiple systems that we use on any given project.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, I can go back and look at Cisco 9, Cisco 8, Cisco 7, and see what the historical
Would you, and then
numbers
maybe,
have been.
and then come visit me, come see me?
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. The oral report will be received. Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you.